Hello and welcome back to Northwestern Models. Today I'm going to show you how to build the foreground's Hanford Crossing Signal Box. So let's start by opening up the pack. All the foreground building kits come in one of these cardboard packs, which is obviously a lot different to the smaller products which come with basically in a plastic bag and envelope. So opening the box, we can see it's well packed, some bubble wrap, and all the parts are then stored in a resealable bag, which is quite useful as the building kits generally take a lot longer to make than the little accessories, so you can put all the bits that you don't need straight away back in the bag or in the box, which is very useful. So see window frames, steps inside of the signal box, roof tiles, inner framework, more like sides or framework or something, the outside exterior clear sheet for windows, looks like base panels, and of course the instructions, which again is as standard photographic step-by-step instructions, and there's a selection of names on the back side of the sheet, so you could put your own, or you could put your own name on it or choose from the selection that they have provided. So, to glue this kit together, we're going to use two different glues. We're going to use the Rocket card glue, which, if you remember and saw last week's video, you will see that we use that. That's going to be used for the main building part of it. And then, because we're fitting windows, we're also going to use the Deluxe Materials Glue and Glaze, because this set's absolutely clear and is designed for fitting windows and making windows. So we'll use that a little bit later when we need to start building up the windows. So first step is to build up the frame, the inner frame of the box. So I'm just going to put all these other bits in the box out of the way, so they don't get lost and damaged and like that. The roof. Following step one, it basically is to build up the inside framework, and again, as with all the foreground kits, they're all laser cut, so you've just got to hunt out and find the little tabs where they're still attached to the fret and knock them out. With the building kits, you also you're able to put in a hole in the base, hopefully be able to see it, which is a square hole, so if you wanted to fit lighting inside, you could do it that way. So will be putting the hole in the actual base, but not in the upper floor, because the upper floor I'm hoping to be able to fit in the spring side signal box interior kit, which we also sell. So the first parts I need are A1 and A2, so I'll get them cut out and then start cutting out the side sheets. So now I've got the base, the first floor, and two of the side floors as well, the walls, sorry. So it's basically to start gluing it together, and with the building kits, they're all very, very simple because they literally do all slot together, because it's all basically tongue and groove fitment, so it should all slot together very, very well. If not, you could get a small needle file and just file in around the tabs or the slots just to ease it in a little bit better. So let's assemble this up. So it is important to try and get the signal box the right way around, and on the base you'll notice that there's a large cutout on one side. That is going to be the front of the box, so that matches with the small cutout on this upright piece. Now the inner walls, which this is one, is made of more solid wood than the base and a lot of the other parts, and that's just to give the building some strength. So that will stick on there, and then you just build the rest of the sides up like so. So I'll go along and start gluing it all together. So now we've got the basic shape of the signal box put together. So whilst the glue's drying on this, we can put it to one side because the next job is to fit the doors. Now the doors come on two separate sheets, and you've got the main part of the door on one sheet, and on the other one you've got some nice revealed detail. So the doors need essentially laminating together, but you've got to remember that there's two doors on the signal box. You've got the one at the top of the box here, and you've also got the access door on the bottom on the opposite side, so you can get to all the signalling switchgear and stuff like that. So again, as with all of it, because it's all laser cut, you can simply just cut the tabs for the doors out from the frets and put the frets away to one side, because you'll need those later for the windows, and then do the exact same with the reveals, like so. And again, put the fret to one side, and there's no right or wrong way to put these on. It is just a case of a little bit of glue, and they should just go on together. I always prefer to put the glue on the back of the reveal piece because it's not as noticeable, and you only need a very small amount of glue, just enough to hold it. So I usually get it with these, I'll just go down the length of them. And then quite simply just put the door together, adjust it so it's all square and nice and neat, and then that one's then, once it's dried, is then ready to fit, and let's do the same with the other one. It's all together. So now we've got the two doors ready to go in. So now that the glue's dried enough, we can actually see about fitting these, and we don't want to fit them flush or too far inside. They want to be just matching the outside edge of the doorway. So yes, get it in as neat as you can, and it is just a case of a little bit of glue around the outside of the door, and then just quite literally slot it into place. Can be a little bit fiddly, but with a bit of patience they will go in place and you'll get there with it. If you wanted to, you could even model it with the door, with one of the doors slightly open to sort of show that the signal box is open, or somebody's doing some work in it or something like that, for a bit of added character. But I'm just going to model this all closed up. So there we are, one door, and then the other one up the top of where the stairs will go. Just push that to there a bit. So that's that. So the next job is to actually do the windows, but it's only to fit the glazing. And in the kit there's a big glazing sheet. Now it probably won't pick it up on the camera, but there is markings on there for you to cut out around, because the glazing actually goes on the front of this as it is now, rather than on the inside. It actually goes on the front, so then when we put the cladding on, it sandwiches the glazing in between. So this is where we will get the glue and glaze out once we cut out the acetate windows. There are numbers on the acetate as well to tell you where each one goes. First two, so that's numbers 11 and 12. So 11 goes on this small single window here, so get the glue and glaze out. What I'll actually do is put the glue around the outside on the actual signal box itself, when the glue wants to pour out the bottle. Oh, here we go. The good thing about the glue and glaze is that it's basically PVA based, so it dries clear, but it's also incredibly strong when it does dry. So if you end up with little bits of glue coming through into the window itself, the visible part of the window, it will still dry clear. Sort of, if you end up with big blobs, just wipe them away and put them somewhere else, just to make a neater job of it. Right, so that one goes there, so 12 goes on the opposite side. So, if you do get the glue and glaze, you do get the narrow little tips as well, which are very, very useful when they want to work. I think this one must be a little bit blocked up, so we'll have to manage without today. Put a little, it doesn't need a lot of glue, just enough on there that it's going to do the job. That's nice nice and square. And try your best not to get the glue in the window area, but don't worry too much if you do, if you are using the glue and glaze glue, because it does dry absolutely clear, and as I said, is designed specifically for use on windows. So 2 more to do, which is the big window at the front, which is that one, and then the little window on the lower level, which goes around here somewhere. So the little one goes on there, and then the big one will go above it. So let's glue those up. Don't try and do, all the windows at the same time. So don't glue everything and then try and get all the windows fixed. Do one at a time, as it just makes it a lot easier to handle, and you kind of know where you're up to then as well, without everything getting all messy and sticky and horrible. So. As long as you've got enough on there, it will stick quite happily. So there we are, that's the windows in. Right, I've just been and washed my hands because my hands were getting a bit sticky with the glue. But the next job now is actually to start putting the cladding on. Now, this particular kit is obviously a wooden type signal box. For some reason the camera's just jumped out of focus. There we go. And it's all laser etched wood in the framework, and it is a case of just match the piece up with whichever side it is on the signal box, and it's quite easy because you've got obviously at the top here the front of the signal box with the big 3 large windows, the one of the sides, the side with the door, and then the back on the other side there as well. So as before, nick them out with your craft knife. And it says to do follow the instructions as you go through it, as it suggests putting the sides on first, so the side of the door and these 2 small windows, and then the front and the back you put on afterwards, because they then overlap better to hide any gaps in the framework. So we'll do that. So the first side is the side with the door. So I've got the door. So this, again, with the base being laser cut, it's got little tabs in ready to go. So that sticks on that side there. So out with the rocket card glue and try literally just spread it around. Probably take the small nozzle off for this, but not going to, because I've got a couple more little jobs to do with it, and quite simply just slot and it sticks on. Incredibly simple. So that goes on there. If you wanted, you could possibly get a peg in the top just to hold it at the top if you wanted, but I think This one should be okay, especially if you do the other side, put a little bit of weight on it with the box. So on the other side will just sit on top. So glue around. Just be careful around the window frame, because obviously you don't want a lot of or any glue really showing up around the window frame. There. Line it up with the tabs and drop it into place. So that's your two sides on. You can see how the signal box is all really well starting to come together at this point, because all of a sudden you've got the exterior panels on and the detail is starting to come through. Now I think I'm actually going to get a couple of pegs just to help hold that. So you've got some nearby. You could use small clamps for these as well, but a good old clothes peg generally will do the trick quite happily. So let's do the front, which is a slightly more complex one. Obviously there's a bit more shape to do. Get right down on the edge with this little nozzle that you get with the card glue. Make sure it all lines up with the side pieces on both sides, and then you can get another peg just in on top just to help hold it in place. I'm actually going to put two on there just to sort of double make sure. It also comes in handy for when you tip it over that way, it's going to sit relatively flat for you. So again on the back, glue up to the edges, and around the top and bottom as well. And as with the front, make sure that the back lines up with the side edge pieces as well. So hopefully I should be able to now peg the back up, and everything should now more or less line up. It actually looks like the front one has moved rather annoyingly. So very carefully, because this side panel has moved, just very carefully, whilst the glue's still a bit sticky, just going to reset it so that it all lines up better in there, as it had actually moved. So might want a bit more glue in there. See how it holds. Check the others are okay, which they are. Yeah, so I think we'll put a little bit more. Yeah, we'll put some more glue on that. It's important at that point to make sure that all the sides are lined up properly as you want them. Because if I left that much longer, I wouldn't have got that off in one piece. So now pop it back on, knowing that the glue will definitely hold it in the right place this time. So then we should be left with a square box with wooden planking around it, and at the top there should be a small recess behind the planking against the inner walls. That's how it's supposed to be, because that's where your ceiling slots in. So make sure that you don't try and line the sides up with the top of there, because otherwise it won't work. So I think we can I'll just leave that to one side. So whilst we've moved the box itself to one side, the next stage is actually windows. Now the windows are similar to the doors because they kind of go on the same fret, but you've got an inner frame, which are these ones with all the details on, and you've then got an outer frame with, which hopefully you might be able to see on the camera, it's just basically an open square. Now for this particular kit there's two different sizes. There's the part numbers are D1 and then there's a D3. Now the D3 has the smaller D4 set off here, and these go in these windows here at the bottom of the box, because these are for the signal control gear, so all the mechanicals of the signal box are behind these two windows, so they make up those, and all the other ones go in the top frame windows up here. So to fit them, I've found it easier in the past to sort of ignore the instructions on the sheet which say to build the windows up off the signal box, but to actually put the framework in first, and then put the actual detail bits in afterwards onto the actual building. So if we start with these two bottom ones, which I know are D3, I'll just take the first two frames out to show you. Put them to one side. So you are quite literally left with a square to go in, and that should fit nicely into the frame, onto the building, like so. So all I'm going to do there will be to glue around the edge of the window on the signal box with the glue and glaze, and then drop each of those in. But I'll also have the other windows that go inside the frames ready to drop in as well, so that can then be caught by any excess glue and glaze, so that the frames then stick in all at the same time. It just makes, to me, it just makes the job a lot easier to do, and it's a lot less fiddly than trying to get those glued into there and then everything glued into the signal box. It's very much a fiddle, and I don't particularly like doing it that way. So let's go and clean that out. I'll just go and clean the tip out for the glue and glaze, and we'll start sticking them in. So there we are, all the windows are now fitted, they're all glued in place, and they've all gone in rather well. As I said, that's the easiest way I've found to fit the windows on these foreground buildings. Anyway, that's those done, so on to the next stage, which is to fit the outer cladding. You've got there's plenty of cladding on this kit. And this is this brown stuff, so you get the nice sort of two-tone colour scheme. This is on another. It's a very thin fret, this, so you are warned. And you need to start off with F3, and it's already, because it's that thin, it's already fallen out. And you've got to cut out the inner parts of these as well. Now, this particular fret, this inner one, let's say, fits onto the side of the signal box where the upstairs door comes into it, so it's going to fit onto this side here. So I'll just cut the middle out again, find the notches, and there. It is one of the joys of having a laser cut kit, is that you've only got to find the small little notches to cut the bits out, rather than cutting around everything like you would with a die cut. So you've got the fret. Now it has got plank markings on it, vertical and horizontal, so that should easily tell you which way round it goes, and it does literally slot over the outside of the box, like so. So that's going to get stuck on with the rocket card glue, and the sides actually line up nicely with the front and the back, so you can line up these edges here with the edges on the back and the front of the box. So glue the back of here, and we will go most lines. Glue that, carefully pick it up and line it up at the bottom, and that should then slot over everything on the side. And you should also find that with this one, that the cutout around here, around the bottom of the door, is still there, because that's where we're going to fit the steps a little later on. So once that one's on there, I imagine we'll then do the opposite side, checking the instructions, and yes we do. We then move on to F1, and which is the other side, and then you just work your way around the box, the front and then eventually the back. So I'll get these stuck on, and we'll then go on to the next stage. So with all the sides now completed, we can move on to the next, and probably what is one of the most difficult bits to do, which is the steps. It slots together, it sort of slots together, but you've got to start with the the four side pieces, which are the handrails. They've also got, two of them have the slots in for the steps. So we need to cut out these first. Like so. Obviously they're handed, so it's quite obvious which way around they go. But if you look at the detail on them, they go back to back, so that one will go with that one, so that they mate back to back properly like that. So there is handrail details on both of them. So just same as the others. So they stick together as the same as everything else, just back to back. Again, just rocket card glue it, nice and quick and easy to do. So, and pop that on top and line it up. It's important to get it lined up together so that it all matches how it should do, which again is another one of the joys of these laser cut kits, is that everything generally lines up. I'm just going to stick a peg on that just to help hold it together, just while the glue goes off. On the front as well, and do the same with this pair. So it's right up to the ends. Put that one on top of there. So okay, to that one. So pick that, hold it together, and then the other end, and again peg that and hold that together. So now pop those to one side just to dry off for a few minutes, whilst we then cut out all the steps apart from the top one, which we'll leave till just until the staircase is built. So cut these out. Again, with these steps, as with most of the other parts of the kit, there is a top side to each piece, and you can see that. You probably won't be able to see on the camera, but there is the step is made of essentially two boards, because they've laser cut an etch into there to act as a plank gap, so as if you've got two planks to each step. So the first set of steps that I glued together, you get that, and it is because each step is a T piece, it's in the shape of a letter T. Makes it quite obvious which way round the steps go. So essentially the top part of the T shape goes into the slots which are in the handrails. Now you build up all the steps on one side, and then once all they're stuck in place, you then add the other handrail to the other side, or that's what you're supposed to do. So let's give it a go. If you work from the bottom up the staircase and work your way up towards the top, you ought to find it a little bit easier. Now, you may have noticed I'm gluing about 3 steps at a time. That's just to make life a bit easier for myself, so that I'm not gluing and sticking each individual step, because I know with the glue it doesn't go off immediately, but there's enough time to play with it, enough to usually get about 3 pieces in. That's again showing my experience as a model maker. Last 3. Quite surprising how quickly some of these steps like to grab hold of you. Last one. Or probably more to the point, we'll try and escape. Right, so that's those ones. So I'm just going to leave those in there to settle for a minute, and then becomes the difficult task of getting the steps glued into the other side, because we've got to glue all of them in at the same time. So going through the other side and putting all the glue in for this side. To behave. So hopefully we'll be able to get most of these in more or less first time. Oh, hey! Right, that's all those glued in. So, just to help keep everything nice and upright, I'm just going to very carefully, he says, nope, bad idea. It's all coming apart. Ignore what I just said. Come on. If you do find that it's come apart like this has, just work with it. It will come together eventually. It might be that you need to perhaps glue a couple in at a time and then come back a little later on and glue the rest in there. So just wedge a peg in there to help hold it. I think it's just a case of just hold it in place. hopefully be able to see that I'm just using the craft knife to just help me get these steps back in place to the final positions. The reason I use a craft knife is it's a nice tool that you can just point with, and it just acts as like a pencil. I mean, you could use a pencil or another relatively sharp object and it'll hold it. So I'm just going to put a little bit more glue just on the underside of each step. Again, it's just to help sort of hold it in position, really. Sort of a bit of belt and braces, as it were. That's right. So before this gets stuck in to the actual box and before it all sets properly, we've got the one last remaining step in the fret. Now, to quickly nick this out of here, because this goes in to the actual signal box itself, underneath the door here there's a slot been left for it in all the other bits. So just a quick dry test. Yes, it fits in there. So I'm just going to add a bit of glue in to that tab hole there. Should then hold it. So then that's then the top step in, like so. And then with that in, we can then add glue to the ends of the top of the steps, and it might actually, I'm going to put it in the gaps there, it's a bit easier and see where it needs to go properly then. Glue in there, and that side, and very carefully slot the steps in to the gap, like so, and then press down and in to get the steps sitting square and hitting the floor. So then once they're in place, we can then go to the underside and we can just add a tiny bit of glue underneath each handrail and underneath each step. To just add an extra little bit of strength to it. Just helps everything stay in place where we want it, as good as possible. Same on the other side. The idea, of course, of gluing the underside is that for most viewing angles you're never going to actually see that. So that should now be the steps on the side of the box. So we're very quickly coming towards the end of this build now. We've only got the roof left to do, and then to put the signal box name on. So I'm just going to again put the box to one side to dry off while we assemble the roof. Now if we go right way back to the very first fret we had, which had the base and the first floor, it also has the ceiling in. So we can drop this out of here, like so. Now this actually fits in to the top of the box. I'm just bring it back a minute, into that recess we have with all the sides coming up higher than the inner walls, so it fits into there quite happily. But to make sure it does fit in there, we've got two other pieces which come on the same frets as the inner walls did, and it's these G2 and G3 pieces. These should pop out of there quite easily, and it's quite obvious how they go together, because they quite literally slot one on top of the other to make a cross, like so. And these in turn then glue onto the ceiling piece, which has 4 holes in it, ready to glue them into place. So just put some glue in and we'll fit it together. Do the bottom one first, followed by the top one. So that's that glued together. We then actually have 4 small triangle pieces. There's 2 on each of the thicker boards. Just pop them all out. So these will make up the inner roof section, and they do quite simply glue and stick onto those pieces, onto the base, until we've basically made a small pyramid. So we've got all 4 on. There. That one there. Now, as you can see, that's made it a very nice, very simple little pyramid on there. And what I'm actually going to do is run a little bit of glue down each of the edges where they join, just to give it an added bit of strength in the joint. Like so. So we'll just let that go off now. Whilst that is going off, we can then cut out the actual tiles themselves, which are on the grey sheet. It's just 4 triangles, you can't miss it. So whiz these out. And what you'll notice about the roof tiles is that there's 2 of each type. And when I say each type, I mean there's 2 with 3 tabs down its line, and there's 2 with 2 tabs. And the reason for that is so that they all slot together like a jigsaw with these joints. and it's best to try and just do one or two, just work your way around one by one, to allow you a bit of movement, because they don't always fit the best, it has to be said, but they do fit. It might take a little bit of manoeuvring to get them to line up nicely on the roof piece itself. So let's do 2 to start with. So put that on there. And put the 2 on. No, 3 on. 3 on. That one. You just try and line them up as best as possible, and go around and do the same for the other 2. Actually, these have gone together very well indeed, actually. You do sometimes find with some of the other kits that the roofs don't always fit as well, and it's because of the funny awkward angles more than anything. But what you should end up with eventually is a small grey pyramid, which is obviously the roof. So the best thing to do now is to leave that to dry to one side, and I'll bring the box in, because now it's time to start thinking about fitting the name. Now, because this is going to be on show at any exhibition that we go to, I'm obviously going to have to put on the Hanford Crossing Signal Box, because that's the name of the kit. So let's cut it out of the instructions very carefully. If you wanted to, you could fit your own signal box name on. You can get cast signal box letters and names and things, but it fits on in the little gap underneath the windows, well, between the sets of windows. It fits on in there. So again, just a tiny bit of rocket card glue just along its length. So, and then I'm just going to turn the box around so I can actually centrally get this on, so it looks good and proper. In about there. So, and that's gone on very nicely indeed. Just a bit. There we go. So that's the crossing box name on the front. So then all that's left to do is, once the roof has dried, is fit the lid. So there we are. That is how to build the Hanford Crossing Signal Box. So there we go. That's how to build the Hanford Crossing Signal Box kit from Foreground. We hope that you enjoyed the video, and if you do, don't forget to give us a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well, because we'll have a new video each and every week showing different parts of the model railways. be it either building a kit or actually building a model railway, which is coming very, very soon. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and check out our website www.northwesternmodels.co.uk for all of your model railway detailing kits and accessories. Until next week, very happy modelling.